are back with another episode 6, talking about how we can avoid major injuries. So, yeah, I wanted to kind of talk about this and kind of just talk about how we are able to avoid any big injuries that come along the way, especially for people that are physically active like myself. And I know we do, especially for me, there's a lot of activities that I do that can be very, very strenuous, especially if we push ourselves to the limit or even past our limit. As I mentioned before, things like doing jujitsu, I mean, you're basically doing a lot of grappling and getting yourself into a lot of positions where your limbs are very vulnerable. I mean, you're basically trying to submit the other person by manipulating their limbs, and you're purposely trying to cause injury to the other person. So when you're doing activities like that, I mean, you're kind of bound to get injured. But not everybody does jujitsu, and not everybody does that type of extreme physical activity. So, you know, it would vary from person to person and also depending on what type of activities that you do. But I do want to touch on this and kind of talk about my experiences of how I've dealt with injuries and given my history of all kind of sports and activities that I've been involved in. So I have built up a little bit of experience in regards to that and dealing with a lot of injuries that came along my way. And all of it is anecdotal. Um, I don't have the perfect science, the exact science of how to deal with certain injuries, or may not know all the terms, all the anatomy to the human body, but I could only share from my personal experience. And I don't want to claim that I'm like a medical professional, that my way is the best way to dealing and preventing injuries, but this is just my experience from what I've gathered from all the information that I've gathered from the past and how I've dealt with my own personal injuries. And so, you know, I'll start from the very beginning. I've always been a kid that was always very active, that enjoyed playing, a variety of sports. So, um, definitely an active kid growing up, playing all kinds of sports and getting involved in all sorts of physical activity. And eventually, when I got into high school, I invested into high school basketball, and basketball is what something that consumed a lot of my time. And you know, there have been so many days of me just trying to get better at the game, just practicing, running, getting in shape, doing whatever I needed to do to be the best basketball player that I could be. So, and then even after high school, always playing basketball, trying to work out, stay in shape. So, with that being said, there were a lot of injuries and a lot of challenges that I had to face physically when it came to dealing with a lot of ailments, a lot of injuries that could come along the way. Now, fortunately enough, like I never dealt with any big injuries, and what I mean by big or major injuries, I'm talking about like going under the knife, getting surgery, you know, like tearing ligaments or tendons, like things like that. I was fortunate enough to not get surgery. So I never went to that extent where I was out for an extended period of time, like 6 months to a year. I did have some injuries along the way. I mean, even now they're still lingering and still bothering me. So I could go down a list of all those things, and I'll probably share some along the way and specific examples and specific injuries that I've dealt with. But um, yeah, I'll only share it just so it could be helpful and beneficial for those that listen to this podcast that want to still be able to be active and exercise a lot and still um, be smart enough to not overdo it and not cause any unnecessary injuries that probably could be avoided. And I would say in my high school career playing basketball, there have been like several injuries that I've dealt with, but nothing big. I know I've dealt with rolling my ankles multiple times. I mean, that's pretty common injury, um, where you would sprain your ankle by just rolling your ankle to the side and putting a lot of weight and for your ankle to just kind of land incorrectly, whether it's from a jump or you're stepping on someone's foot, or if you're running, you just like misstep and your ankle just turns. And so I definitely dealt with that. And usually with those type of injuries, I mean, you just rest it for like a couple weeks. You know, make sure you ice it if there's swelling. And usually that's how I dealt with that, is just giving it some rest and then getting back on it. And usually when you're younger too, you're able to really just suck it up and just kind of power through it. You can kind of push yourself through the injury, and the injury would usually heal a lot slower, but you'd still be able to play through the pain. So, but now as I've gotten older, that's a lot harder to do. You could still play through the pain, and maybe if I were to roll an ankle right now, um, depending on the severity of the sprain or the severity of the injury, you probably wouldn't be able to like play through it and let it heal at the same time. Um, so actually, funny enough, I did have a big ankle sprain couple years ago. I would say it was about 2 or 3 years ago, where um I was doing a lot of workouts, and this is documented on the content of me trying to increase my vertical, and I was doing a lot of plyometrics, a lot of workouts that involved strengthening the legs and trying to increase my vertical jump. And so I remember just playing basketball with a couple of my friends. I think we are just playing a game of 21 with me and two of my friends, and which is a basketball game uh, that you pretty much play up to 21 points. And I remember jumping up for a rebound, and I remember jumping pretty high, trying to get the rebound. And then as I landed, I turned my ankle. I recall stepping on my friend's foot. So we were both going for the ball at the same time. We are both up in the air, and then when I landed on his foot. It turned my ankle, and it was a pretty bad injury. It hurt a lot. So um, jumping so high and then also landing and turning my ankle and putting all that weight on that ankle, that got severely sprained my ankle. I did not get it checked up to the doctor, and even now it's still it's definitely better. It's definitely back to full health, but you could just tell like there's a part in the ankle where it's still like there's still a little bit of tenderness because I guess it's just a damaged part of the ankle that just never fully recovered. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but it's still good, but it's definitely not as flexible as it once used to. And so I remember when I injured that ankle, um, I knew it was pretty bad, and so um, I had to have rested for about several weeks, and then I think I tried playing on it again, but knowing that when I did play, I was playing on pain, and I know I couldn't do as much. I tried playing basketball on it, and I just took it very easy. I wasn't going too hard, or I wasn't jumping really high for any rebounds like that. So I did try playing basketball again, knowing that it wasn't fully healed and that I was playing in pain. And so, um, I understood I need to give it more rest and just stop playing basketball for additional weeks just to let it completely heal. And yeah, I just knew that it needed proper amount of rest before I could get it back to full health, and that all that time off was preventing me from working out and at least working out my legs to increase my vertical jump. That was like the big thing that I wanted to do. I believe I was still working out like my upper body and stuff, but I was pretty inactive for the most part, and that ankle injury really took me out for some time. Um, Eventually, when my ankle got better, I did some mobility exercises. I would look up online to see like some ankle stretches, ankle mobility exercises, ankle strengthening exercises to rehab it to get back to full strength. So kind of what I've learned in my later years is understanding that um, if I were to get some kind of injury, I would give it some rest, wait till it heals up, and when it has improved um, on the health of that body part, then I would rehab it to strengthen the muscles around it because I know having rest that body part, all the surrounding muscles have probably weakened for a bit, so I need to strengthen it up again, and then slowly I get back into those activities that I was doing before. And so I was very aware of that, understanding that you need to give it proper rest. You need to make sure you rehab it back to full strength, and then you could get back to doing your daily activities or your daily exercises that you were doing before the injury. And so that's how I treated it with my ankle, and my ankle's good. I don't do as much ankle exercises nowadays. I know I definitely strengthen it back to close to 100%, and I'm able to do pretty much anything that I want. As I mentioned, the ankle doesn't feel the same as it once used to. It feels a little stiff, and there's a little bit of tenderness when I put weight on it in certain positions. But for the most part, it's fine and it's doing well. So I think I went about it the right way to make sure that my ankle is good and is usable. So that's definitely one specific, I guess, one of the bigger injuries that I experienced a couple years back, um, and yeah, I just try to what I really try to do is this is for me just kind of learning along the way, just learning about stretching, flexibility, rehab, rest, and all that, just to make sure that I avoid injury. And a lot of times too, I recall just getting injured because I would always push myself and overdo it, and not giving myself enough rest for like my muscles to recover. And whenever I work out sore, I do another activity when my body's already compromised and when it really needs recovery, that's when I felt like I'm more success susceptible to injuries. So I've come to realize in my later years that when I do get really sore, or if I've overdid it on one aspect of the training for one day, usually the next day I would, instead of going back to back, I would just take that day just to rest, just to let my body recover, and then go back at it the next day or the day after that. Sometimes I would go back to back, or I would maybe play basketball one day, and the next day I have like jujitsu training. So maybe the second day in jujitsu training, I wouldn't go as hard as I would if I were to be fresh. So I'm very conscious of like, hey, I played basketball the day before, my body's a little stiff. Let's take it a little easier today so I don't overdo it and get myself injured. And then after maybe 2 days of straight doing workouts like playing basketball or jujitsu, then that third day I'd give it some rest. I just wouldn't do anything on the third day and let my body recover. One thing I noticed too is making sure I get enough sleep throughout the day. Obviously, getting that 7 to 8 is optimal and is important to let your body recover. I noticed too, like if I try to train on days where I'm like sleep deprived, like I could just tell my body is just not right. It's not at full health. It's a little tight, a little stiff. And yeah, I just know that I didn't give my body enough rest or sleep for it to fully recover. So that's on my mind too when I do my workouts, is making sure like, oh, I didn't have enough sleep. I might not perform as well through my activities. So um and just make sure like maybe I shouldn't go as hard, take it a bit easier. And so that's how I approach it. I'm not like a professional athlete, so I don't put my body on the line each and every day, because that's just another tier, another level of like physical demand that you have to put your body through. I mean, if you think about, let's just say, like a professional basketball player, they're probably in the gym like every day, going through like shooting workouts, actual basketball workouts, and also lifting weights, doing strength and conditioning to make sure the body's in good shape for the body to build up strength. But every day it's like you're constantly breaking down your body. And so I'm sure when you do that every single day, it's like and you don't give yourself an ample amount of rest, um you're bound to get injured, I would think. So it doesn't surprise me that a lot of professional athletes deal with injuries a lot, because think about it, they're using their bodies like almost every day, and they're pushing themselves to try to get better, to make sure that they're at the peak of their performance. So and some of these athletes are taking performance enhancing drugs as well. So usually depending on what performance enhancing drugs you're taking, it speeds up that recovery. So it a lot of times, a lot of these athletes are able to train 6 to 7 days a week because they have a performance enhancing drug that allows them to recover immediately. And so I would say for myself, I'm not on any types of performance enhancing drugs. I'm not on steroids. So um, for me, at my age, it'll probably take a little longer for me to recover. I'm sure it'd be great to have something like that to allow me to train every day, but to use something a little bit more unnatural, um, to kind of push your body at levels where it's not natural to recover at that rate. I don't know if that's something that I'm for, um, but I don't have like that's just my general take on performance enhancing drugs, and that's why I don't take it. And plus, I wouldn't really know how to access it. I know there's things like testosterone replacement therapy, and I hear those things are great. And it does give you a lot of energy throughout the day and does allow you to exercise and recover quicker. I would assume my testosterone level is at a healthy state and something like that is not needed, but I'm sure if I were to have something like that, that'd be very helpful. But I always wonder in the long run how much that could hurt you in the long run if you use maybe too much testosterone or if you overuse it at a certain period of time through those enhancements. So I don't want to go too much into like performance enhancing drugs. There's a lot of information out there, a lot of great content creators that do talk about that. I mean, I do enjoy talking about that stuff, but it does tie into a lot of like this concept of it does tie into recovery and performance when it comes to like avoiding injury and making sure you want to get as much exercise and activity in to perform at your best. And usually for athletes, there's a lot of pressure, because you're trying to get to the top, you're trying to be the best, and so that competitiveness really drives people to use these type of enhancements to uh, get peak performance and to be able to train as much as they can. And so I'm just sharing it from a perspective where I'm I'm just the average guy. Like I think I'm in decent shape. I think I could lose a little bit of fat. I probably have a little bit too much fat in me. Probably I would say probably over 20% right now. In terms of body weight percentage. I mean, last time I really checked was about a year ago. Um, and I was probably weighing about 175 at the time, but now I've cut it down to 160 to 165 in that range in pounds. And so I'm trying my best to get under 160 and trying to stay in shape and have a better diet. And so um I am in better shape. I have been training jiu-jitsu for the past 3 months or so, and so that's been really helping me with building muscle and getting in shape. While at the same time, because grappling is such a grueling and it's so strenuous to the human body that I just gotta be always cautious of like making sure I don't get injured, making sure that I don't overdo it, so I could just kind of have some longevity um, through my training process, and allow myself to train consistently, 2 or 3 times a day. So when it comes to me in an extreme case where I'm doing jujitsu 2 to 3 times a week, where people are trying to submit me, trying to manipulate my limbs, trying to choke me out. Yeah, I'm definitely always getting sore, always getting marks, and constantly my body is being broken down, like almost after every training session. And so I think the one part of my body where it's really bothering me are like my shoulders right now. I don't know if it's like my rotator cuff, but it would just like it would hurt my shoulders if I just lift it and put my hand right here. I'm still able to train and do a lot of things. I just have probably limited shoulder movement due to a bit of pain. And also in my neck and upper back area is very tight as well. And so I always try to use a massage gun. I always try to stretch it out and make sure those areas are loose. And if I have days where I go maybe 2 days in a row and like my upper back, my shoulder area is tightening up a lot and it's really hurting, then I would take maybe a day or two off, make sure I just recover. So I'm always like stretching my neck out here, pushing it to the side, making sure that like these muscles are loose, they don't tighten up too much, and making sure that I get a good warm up in even before the training session. And sometimes I don't. Like I'm not the most disciplined at it when it comes to like warming up or stretching. I know if I did more, it would help a lot. So one thing is like one thing I discovered when I was in my 20s was just understanding like the concept of yoga, the concept of stretching, how that loosens up the tight muscles. Because I feel like a lot of times you could get injured with your ligaments and your tendons because your muscles are so tight that just pulling on each other end up pulling on the ligaments and the tendons. So I realized like, oh, you need to like stretch these out, and you need to do it on a consistent basis, especially if you're very active. Um, to make sure that your body is loose, your muscles are loose, um, in order to prevent injury. So I used to do a little bit of yoga, used to incorporate a lot of stretches, and I would do them on my own. And I'd have phases or periods of time where I would stretch for like 30 minutes to 1 hour a day, just stretching on things, and I really seen my flexibility increase in certain areas of my body. So I definitely know the benefits of that, and I know that me even doing that while I'm exercising has also uh, prevented me from getting injured and getting cramps and all that, or even major injuries. Um, I re- so yeah, incorporating stretching is super important, and I would also point out like there's also a lot of freak injuries that people experience, like kind of like rolling that ankle. That example that I was explaining, like sometimes you just go for a rebound for a basketball and you jump and then you land on someone's foot. I mean, those are a lot of things that you can't control. Um, if you do go for those, so there's things like that that you freak accidents that you can't control, and you just when you do experience them, then you just make sure you follow that protocol of just giving it some rest to recover, and then doing the rehab and getting back to 100%. Um, I could also discuss on, things when you are playing certain types of sports. There are definitely people out there when you participate with, especially group activities, where mm, you run into people that are a bit more spazzy, that are a bit more out of control with their movement, and with that being in place, you gotta kind of be cautious and be aware of those type of people that, oh, this guy, if I'm around him too much, I could get myself injured. So I gotta do things to kind of prevent myself from being too involved with that person. Things like that. Like when it comes to basketball, you might have people that go crazy for rebounds and like flailing their elbows and pushing people, and you just kind of anticipate their movement and kind of avoid them a little bit. So I'm very cautious of that too, of people like that. Um, when it comes to participating in group activities. So just for my sake, so I don't get injured. And yeah, there's always those type of athletes or those type of players out there. So I keep my mind of that in order for me to avoid injury. So there's that. One thing I wanted to point out was so I remember I don't know what year it is, but I'm a big basketball fan. I follow basketball. Um, and I definitely enjoy watching the NBA playoffs. And one season, I think this was year 2018 or 2019. It was the NBA Finals with the Golden State Warriors and the Toronto Raptors. And the Raptors won um, that NBA Finals. They won the NBA championship. But during that series between those two, there was Kevin Durant, who was injured prior to him returning for one of the games. I don't know which game it was, but he was dealing with a calf sprain, or not calf sprain, sorry, a calf strain. And it seemed like he was going to be out for the whole playoffs, but he decided to come back sooner and play through the injury. And he was doing well the first quarter where he was making all his shots, but there was one play where he was making a drive to the basket where he had to push off that injured calf, and on that move, he tore his Achilles tendon. And I don't know if this was explicitly stated, but it did seem like that calf strain had a lot to do with that Achilles tearing. And so he was out for like over a year after that, just because he came back too soon and not let that calf strain recover. I feel like that had a lot to do with that. I'm sure I'm sure there are people out there that are professionals that know the muscle and the Achilles and how they're attached and how that took a play into the Achilles tendon. The reason I bring that up is because I remember when I was playing basketball, I had a similar injury with dealing with the calf strain. I don't know how I got the calf strain from, but I know my left calf, the lower part of my calf that was closer to the tendon, either it was an Achilles strain or a calf strain, but I know every time I push off of it or I run, it would hurt. And so, but the thing was, like, I kept playing basketball on it. I kept exercising, and this was years back. I don't know how old I was exactly. I was in my 20s. But I kept playing on it. Like every week, I'll play basketball once a week. But thinking that, okay, I won't do anything for a week, and hopefully that gives it enough time to recover. But I would still deal with that same pain of the calf strain. And so it eventually got to a point where I got concerned because it just felt like whenever I played, it was tugging at my Achilles. And I just always felt like, oh, if I just keep playing on this, like I feel like my Achilles is gonna tear. And eventually came to a point where I realized, like, yeah, I can't risk it. It's not worth putting myself or risking myself to get a major injury like tearing my Achilles, because then that would mean I would have to be out for a year, have to go under the knife, get surgery, and yeah, and have to do all that rehab to get back to full strength. And a year of just not doing anything, that's just, yeah, that hurts. That would hurt me a lot, being that I'm a physical active guy, that I enjoy exercising. That'd be really rough on me. And so um yeah, I remember just realizing that I had to take a couple weeks off from playing basketball. And so I think I took about maybe a month to 6 weeks off of just not doing anything. No basketball, no nothing, no running or anything, to let my calf fully recover. I think I remember looking up, like, that's how long it usually took for calf strains to heal. So I gave it that much ample amount of time for it to recover. I remember after that I would rehab it, just do a lot of calf raises, do a lot of exercises to strengthen the ankle, the foot, the calf, to get it stronger from having 6 weeks off of just recovering. So just strengthening it, I think, for about a couple weeks to a month or so, and then I slowly started playing basketball again, and I didn't really feel that pain anymore. It was pretty much recovered at the time. I bring those examples up because I do see the difference in that. For me, I was aware of that, like, this could cause to a bigger injury, and me having realizing that and just being able to have the discipline to just tell myself, hey, I need to rest it. I need to make sure I need to rest this calf, um, so it doesn't get any worse. I did that. I gave it the proper amount of rest, did some rehab, and I was good. And I was able to um, get back to 100% and do what I've been doing, playing basketball and working out and exercising. And so, because I did that, because I had the self awareness uh, to recognize that I could avoid this injury, that I need to address it now so I don't get a bigger injury uh, ahead of that. And I think me doing that probably did avoid me getting, preventing myself from getting my Achilles torn. So I would have been like Kevin Durant. Obviously, in Durant's case, there's a lot on the line to win another championship for the legacy. And so maybe if I was in his position, I would have done the same thing. Also, getting medical consultation at the time with a lot of the medical staff and their teams, thinking that it would have been okay to continue playing. And so I'm sure he got a lot of advice, a lot of professional advice for him to think that it was okay. But unfortunately, it wasn't the case, and he had to sit out for, I think, a season or two after that, for taking that risk. Um, so for me personally, I didn't have that kind of thing on the line. So I valued my health more. I valued just avoiding bigger injuries like that. So, um, I bring that up as a big example to understand, like, sometimes like you just need to give your body rest, and it's also helpful to kind of know the anatomy and the body parts, to know your ligaments, to know your tendons and how it's connected to muscle, and if there's something going wrong, to make sure that that you address it and that you allow it to rest and recover, and to not overdo it to the point where you risk yourself of getting a major injury. And so, um, yeah, and then there's all those things where if you work out, you do certain types of workouts, muscle strengthening workouts, that's also very helpful too. I'm not too well versed in that area. Obviously, I do my own workouts, and I look up kind of like my own research on certain types of workouts to improve like certain areas, or to avoid certain pains in certain parts of my body. So definitely for me, I'm always looking things up and making sure I got to straighten certain parts of the muscle, because maybe this area is a bit weak here, or I need to stretch it more, or I need to strengthen these muscles around it so I don't experience the pain that I have in certain parts of the body. So, yeah, I just make sure I do my due diligence in those areas to avoid these major injuries, and I've been very fortunate enough to avoid the bigger injuries. Obviously, if I'm keep doing jiu-jitsu, I just got to be careful and making sure like I know my techniques, and making sure I train with like safe training partners that aren't too reckless. Things like that I keep in mind, and making sure like I don't overdo it as well on my end, to make sure like I have longevity in my training, and that um I don't get myself too seriously injured. And so, um, yeah, I share that with you in hopes that you could take this information, you could apply some of the things that I've done as well. Um, and again, only for it to be helpful for you, so you don't have to deal with any, big injuries that'll sit you on the sidelines for a long time. And so, that's the end of that episode. I hope you have found it helpful and beneficial as always. And if you have enjoyed this video, please drop a like. Please subscribe to the content if you haven't already. And we will be posting out more episodes in the days to come. So I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace. Have a good one.